Orvar is one of the oldest and most experienced cove walkers. Like all of his kin, Orvar is capable of changing his shape, preferring marine creatures and water-adjacent humanoids, fishermen, lighthouse keepers, etc. Orvar has been around for such a long time that he has learned to use his powers in more creative ways. For example, he has learned how to spread his physical form across multiple bodies. As long as he has a reference, he can create copies of an observed creature. Although the copies are quite literally an extension of himself, Orvar's intentions are cloaked with mystery. He has spent centuries gathering both knowledge and new forms, but his end goals are unknown. Whenever an ancient tale involves a changeling, it is often secretly about Orvar himself. So now that you know more about Orvar the Allf-Form, let's get into this $100 deck tech. Orvar is a 4-mana 3/3 shapeshifter legendary creature that has changeling and that reads: whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. Also, whenever a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of target permanent. In this $100 deck tech, the aim of Orvar is to use spells that target your permanents and then help you create copies of those permanents to gain value or even win. So in this part of the video, I want to cover the infinite mana combo and / win condition. So with Narumaya and Ghostly Flicker, you generate infinite mana by flickering Narumaya and a land. Then Narumaya enters the battlefield, you copy Ghostly Flicker again, and then you present a loop where you bounce either a land for infinite mana, or in this case Sun-Scorched Desert, to deal 1 damage to any target player. And with Orvar, because you're targeting Narumaya, you'll be able to make a copy of Narumaya and copy Ghostly Flicker with that copy again. With this, you can either target Sage Road Denizen or another land. In this case, if you target Sage Rose Denizen, when it enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. You can target yourself if you have Thassa's Oracle or another win condition on board or in your hand, but otherwise you will mill each opponent and then drain the library, or win through damage through Sun-Scorched Desert. So with this 3-mana infinite mana combo, you can flicker Peregrine Drake and Archaeomancer using Displace to untap 5 lands and then return Displace to your hand. For doing this, you net infinite mana, but the only problem is Archaeomancer needs to enter the battlefield and its trigger needs to resolve to add Displace to your hand. But with this 3-card combo is infinite mana, and using Orvar, you can either make a copy of Peregrine Drake and then has its effect trigger an additional time because of making the copy, or you can make a copy of Archaeomancer and bring back another instant sorcery. But you can essentially make copies of either or as much times as you want to. So because Orvar reads, you basically say the ruling says that you can only create a copy of one creature that is targeted, or like one permanent that is targeted. But in this case, you can, like I said, make a Peregrine Drake copy or Archaeomancer using Displace. So the third synergy or combo that I want to get into is a self-mill combo using Leveler and either or Jace, Thassa's Oracle and Laboratory Maniac. Jace reads: if you draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. And for the +2 ability, you can let target player mill 2 and then draw a card, or you draw 7 cards, and if you have no cards in it, if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. Thassa's Oracle reads: whenever Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If X, where X is your devotion, is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. Then with Laboratory Maniac, if you draw if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. And then lastly, to enable this combo for all 3 cards, you have Leveler, which exiles or / removes the library from the game when it enters play for 5 mana. So with this, for 7 mana you can play Leveler, Thassa's Oracle, or you can play Jace next turn, Leveler on curve, and then exile your library, or through Laboratory Maniac you can just draw a card and then win the game. So the 4th combo or synergy that I want to get into is a Narset wheel. So with Narset Path of Wells, each opponent can draw more than 1 card each turn. With Windfall, you let every player discard their hand and then draw equal to the number of cards a player discarded this way, the greatest number. So on your turn, you can have everyone draw a card, and then they miss each draw trigger after the first one, because Narset stops them from drawing. Gaia Sanitarium, on a player's upkeep, you can have them draw a card, then discard a card, and then they miss that draw step because they already drew a card, and it essentially locks a player out of the game. It's probably better in 1v1 situations, but this does help lock someone out of the game by having no cards in hand. And Windfall is just a very good ability in general. If someone tutors for a card, you know that you have them discard their hand, or just interact with opponent's hand in a very efficient way, because you still get, let's say someone had 8 cards. 8 cards is the greatest number. Each player discards their hand and then draws 8. You draw 8, but each other player draws 1 through Narset. So it's just a very cool synergy, and it's great to have in mono blue. So now that I got into most of the synergies and win conditions, I want to get to the ramp. First off, we have Mind Zone, which is a 2 mana artifact that taps for 1 colorless, or you can pay 1 mana, tap it to sacrifice it to draw a card. For 2 mana, you have Sky Diamond, which enters tapped and then taps for 1 blue. We have Hedron Archive, which is a 4 mana artifact that taps for 2, or you can pay 2 you pay 2 mana, sacrifice it, and then draw a card. And then we have Soul Ring, which is a 1 mana artifact that taps for 2 colorless. Also in the ramp package, we have Prismatic Lens, which is a 2 mana artifact that taps for 1 colorless, or for 1 mana you can tap it to filter colorless mana into any other color. We have Spell Satchel, which is a 2 mana artifact that taps for 1 colorless if you remove a book counter, or you can pay 3 mana and then tap it to remove 3 book counters from Spell Satchel and then draw a card. Spell Satchel has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, put a book counter on Spell Satchel. So for this to be active, you need to have cast instant or sorcery spell, but it's not very difficult because you run a lot of sorceries. We also have Liquid Metal Torque, which is a 2 mana artifact that taps for 1 colorless, or you change a target non-land permanent into an artifact in addition to its other types. And we also have Lotus Bloom, which is kind of spicy, specifically in a deck like this. So it has to spend 3, and then when it enters a battlefield, you can sacrifice it and then add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. And in Orvar, you want to make copies of this deck, but it's also just very good to have that extra mana on turn 3 or 4. So as you might have gathered, one of the game plans in any Orvar, the Allf-Form deck, is targeting permanents to turn them into copies and make copy tokens of whatever you need at the moment. So first off, we have Energy Tap, which is a 1 mana sorcery spell that reads tap target creature you control. Add an amount of colorless mana equal to that creature's casting cost to your mana pool. So targeting anything will net you mana as well as make a copy of that. Then we have Twiddle. You tap or untap target artifact, creature or land for 1 mana, and it is an instant, so you can create a copy of any artifact, creature or land. Twisted Image also targets a creature only, where you swap its power and toughness, and you also draw a card out of it. So let's say you have an Archaeomancer, you target Archaeomancer, you make a copy, you draw a card, and then you let the copy of Archaeomancer get this back to your hand, and then you can create more copies. You also have Psychic Puppery. For 2 mana you tap or untap target permanent, and then you also have Splice onto Arcane. And then you also have Fleeting Distraction, which is a 1 mana instant that targets a creature, bringing down its power by -1, -0, and then you also draw a card. In this deck we will also be using Hidden Strings, which is a 2 mana sorcery that says you may tap or untap target permanent, then you may tap or untap another target permanent, and it has Cipher, so when you cast it you exile it onto a creature, and then whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player you may cast a copy of the encoded card. Then you also have Stream of Unconsciousness, which is a 1 mana tribal instant wizard spell that reads target creature gets -4, -0 until end of turn. If you control a wizard, draw a card. And in this case, Orvar is a changeling, so it does count as a wizard, and then you can draw a card. We also have Dizzy Spell, which is a 1 mana instant that lets target creature's power gets -3, -0. And you can also transmute for 3 mana. You can look for another instant, or you can search for a spell with converted mana cost 1. And in this case, for 3 mana, you'll want to tutor for Mind Games, but I'll get to that in a second. We also have Museum Skin, which gives Orvar or any creature +1, +0 and hexproof, and then you can overload it for 2 mana. But with Mind Games, it's a 1 mana tap target artifact, creature or land, which targets everything you want it to target. And then you can also for 3 mana extra you can buy back. So for 4 mana you can tap target artifact, creature or land, and then make a copy of that through Orvar, and then you can buy back, and it basically goes back to your hand, so you can keep on using it to sink mana into, like, use it as a infinite mana outlet or just cast a lot of spells. The deck will also be using Twitch, which is a 3 mana instant that says you may tap or untap target artifact, creature or land, and then you draw a card. You also have Chilling Trap, which is a 1 mana instant that lets you target a target creature. You shrink its power, and then if you control a wizard you draw a card. But in this case Orvar is a wizard and it will check, and then you can draw a card. We also have Dive Down, same as Museum Skin, that gives a creature, target creature you control hexproof and +0/+3. We also have Defy Gravity. It's a 1 mana instant that reads target creature gains flying until end of turn, and then you can also flashback it from a graveyard for 1 blue mana. I also want to get into the Countermagic package that I chose for this deck. First off, we have Prohibit, which is a 2 mana instant that says counter target spell if its converted mana cost is 2 or less. Or you can pay 2 extra and kick it, and then if the spell was kicked, counter that spell if its converted mana cost is 4 or less. You also have Negate, which counters any non-creature spell. And then you also have Sinister Sabotage, which is a 3 mana counter spell that says counter target spell. And you also have Surveil 1, where you look at the top card of a library and then you may put that card into your graveyard. I will also be using an Offer You Can't Refuse, which is a 1 mana instant counter spell that reads counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates true treasure tokens. And you also have Counter Spell, which is a 2 mana instant that reads counter target spell. We also have Whirlwind Denial, which is a 3 mana instant that reads for each spell or and ability your opponent controls, counter it unless its controller pays 4. So this does counter all triggered ability and spells on the stack, so you can counter an array of counter spells that's on the stack basically. One of the cards that I included in this deck is cards that interact with other people's board states, or in some cases permanents. We have Unsummon, which returns target creature to its owner's hand. You can cast this on any creature and it will make a copy of it if you target your own creatures and Orvar is on the battlefield. Otherwise, you can return a card to someone's hand. Casmina's Transmutation, you can enchant the creature and it becomes a 1/1 and it loses all abilities and has base power 1/1. Starting Development is a 2-mana instant that reads, until end of turn, target creature becomes a blue serpent with base power and toughness 4/4, with also cycling. And you can use this to target any creature. You can even target a 1/1 you own and then turn it into a 4/4 for a blocker. And you also make a copy, or you can use this on any other creature that you need to be turned into a serpent for some reason. Then you also have Brink of an Eye. It's a 2-mana instant that reads, return target non-permanent to its owner's hand, and then if you kick it for the additional 2 mana, you might draw a card. Another strategy that I included in this deck is creatures that you want to copy. First off, we have Muldrifter, which is a 5-mana elemental flying 2/2 that reads, when Muldrifter enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. Or you can, for 3 mana, evoke it. It enters the battlefield, you draw 2 cards, and then you sacrifice it. We also have Scourge of Fleets, which is pretty insane in this deck. It reads, whenever Scourge of Fleet enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponent controls with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. And with all the other targeting spells, you can create copies of Scourge of Fleets, and you have a 6/6 Kraken. We also included in this deck Stormtide Leviathan. It's a 8-mana 8/8 with Island Walk, and that reads, all lands are islands in addition to their other types. And it says creatures without flying or island walk can't attack. So this is essentially a combat lock for anyone that doesn't have flying or doesn't have island walk, and Leviathan in this case has. So you can create copies of Stormtide Leviathan, which is an 8/8, and then you can attack anyone and you have island walk. It's just very valuable in this deck. You also have Murmuring Mystic, which is a 4-mana 1/5 human wizard that reads, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token with flying. And you play a lot of spells in this deck, so you will definitely create a bird army. Other creature cards that you want to make copies of is Archmage Emeritus. It's a 4-mana 2/2 human wizard that has Magecraft and reads, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. With this, every mind game cast on buyback cost can be a card that you draw, and it is by itself an infinite mana outlet. You create a copy of it, you create a copy of anything else using mind games and infinite mana, and then you draw your deck and play Thassa's Oracle or Jace or Laboratory Maniac, or if it's on the battlefield you just outright win. You also have Torrential Gearhulk, which is a 6-mana construct that has flash, and it reads, whenever Torrential Gearhulk enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant card from a graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put in your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So with this, you can cast him for 6 mana and flash. You can use play an instant from your graveyard targeting Torrential Gearhulk again. You can create another copy, another one enters, and then you can keep on doing this until there are no instant spells in your graveyard that target, because this does not present the infinite loop. Every time you cast the instant, it gets exiled if it resolves. You also have Ghostly Pilferer, which is a 2-mana 2/1 rogue that reads, whenever Ghostly Pilferer becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. So this will land you, this will like draw you a card if someone plays their commander, or if someone casts something from Foretell or Exile. And then you can discard a card, and Ghostly Pilferer can't be blocked this turn, which is very valuable. And then also Wavebreak Hippocamp, it's 3-mana 2/2 Horsefish that reads, whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, draw a card. In this case, you can play a negate and then you draw a card. You can play a mind game, draw a card, just any first spell on an opponent's turn. So any counter spell or instant replaces itself, essentially. Now that you've seen most of what the deck holds, I want to get over a few cards that basically just add value to what is already going on in the deck. First up, we have Dream Twist, which is a 1 mana instant that says target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Flashback. With Narumaya, you get an extra spell to copy. So if you play Dream Twist and then play Ghostly Figure and Narumaya, you can have the second copy of Narumaya target Dream Twist, and then you can mold every opponent's deck, even your own. You can just mold their whole library. It also has a flashback cost, and if someone plays, let's say, a tutor that tutors to the top of the library, you can cast this whether for 1 mana or 2 mana through flashback, and then mold that card that they tutored for. We also have Talrand Sky Summoner, which does the same thing as Murmuring Mystic, but instead you create 2/2 blue Drake creature tokens. Then we have Mission Briefing, which is a way to recast any instant or sorcery spell that you have previously played. Mission Briefing is a 2 mana instant that says surveil 2, then choose an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. You may cast this card this turn. If that card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. You also get to surveil 2, so you get to look at the top 2 cards of your library. You can put either one or both into your graveyard or leave them on top or rearrange. And then we also have Leyline of Anticipation. If you have this in your opening hand, you play with it on the battlefield, and it reads you may cast spells as though they had flash, which is very valuable, especially if you want to flash in creatures at someone's end step and then use those cards to gain value. So more of the utility cards that are added to the deck was Mystic Remora. Mystic Remora is a very good card. It's a 1 mana odd enchantment that reads cumulative upkeep 1, and then whenever an opponent plays a non-creature spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 4. So how cumulative upkeep works is on each upkeep you need to pay 1 mana, and then Mystic Remora gets a cumulative upkeep counter, and then on turn 2 you need to pay 2 mana unless you sacrifice it, and then turn 3 you pay 3 mana unless you sacrifice it. But you usually you play Mystic Remora and have it stick around for a while, maybe drawing you enough cards, or if nobody is playing any non-creature spells, you just have it sacrifice. We also have Jace's Sanctum, which is a 4 mana enchantment that lets instant and sorcery spells cost 1 less, and it also reads whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, scry 1. And then we have Fact or Fiction. It's a 4 mana instant that says reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into a hand and the other pile into your graveyard. We also have Treasure Cruise, which is a 8 mana delve sorcery that reads draw 3 cards. So Fact or Fiction and Treasure Cruise is basically just to gain value, look for combo pieces, and Fact or Fiction is instant speed. So you look at the top 5, let's say at someone's end step, and then it's your turn. You pick a pile as well, so it's not that you lose the most valuable cards out of whatever is revealed. And Treasure Cruise helps it's like an outlet to delve away your graveyard and then draw 3 cards out of that as well. And last but not least, we have Opt, which is a 1 mana instant that says cry 1 and then draw a card. We have a 3 mana enchantment that's this Verity Circle is a 3 mana enchantment that says whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And then for 5 mana you can say tap target creature without flying. So if you have, let's say you have infinite mana and you have Mind Games, for 4 mana you can tap a target creature. This triggers Verity Circle and then you may draw a card. And it's very specifically worded you may, because let's say someone is tapping or untapping a card infinite times and you need to draw like each time. At least with this you have the option to or not. We also have Trial of Evidence, which is a 3 mana enchantment that says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, investigate. Now this is very relevant because let's say you have mind games. Let's say you have mind game. You have infinite mana, you play a mind game, you buy back for 4 mana. Through Trial of Evidence you create a clue that you can pay 2 mana and sacrifice to draw a card. So this turns basically each instant and sorcery spell into investigate that lets you draw a card for 2 mana. And then last but not least we have Solve the Equation. For 3 mana you may search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So this goes then searches for any instant and sorcery spell in your deck. Let's say you have Narset and you want the Windfall, you can tutor for Windfall. If you have infinite mana or you have mana available, you can tutor for Mind Game, you can tutor for Ghostly Figure. I think you get the point. It is just very valuable, especially in this deck. Last but not least, we have the lands for the deck. First off, we have Castle Vantress, which is a land that scries for 2. If you pay 4 mana and tap it, otherwise it taps for 1 blue. And it comes in tapped unless you control another island. But this deck runs 30 islands, so it shouldn't be a problem. We also have Reliquary Tower, which taps for colorless and has the static ability that gives you no maximum hand size. Then we also have Gaia Reach Sanitarium that works well with Narset and a Windfall that taps for colorless. Or for 2 mana, you tap it to let each player draw a card and then discard a card. If you've watched the video so far, thank you so much. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Be sure to check out my social media. I stream on Twitch weeknights from 8 to 12. I think that is GMT +2. But anyways, here is some of the cards that I use in the deck, just like a quick layout of everything. Yeah, if you like this video, like and subscribe. Direct support like this helps me out a lot. Share the video to friends if you think that this was helpful in any way. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.